I never saw it coming. Which is funny because seeing things coming was literally my job. For 20 years, I'd been the chief financial officer at Donovan and Sons, managing risks, anticipating market shifts, and steering the company through two recessions without a single quarter in the red. My name is Vanessa Hartwell, and at 53, I thought I knew how business worked. Turns out, I didn't know how Victor Donovan worked at all. The summons to Victor's office came on a Tuesday afternoon. Nothing unusual there. We had weekly meetings to discuss financial projections. I grabbed my tablet with the latest quarterly reports and headed up to the executive floor, mentally reviewing the impressive growth numbers we'd achieved. Victor was standing by the window when I entered, his back to me. That should have been my first clue. In 20 years, he'd always greeted me with a handshake and that booming laugh of his. "Vanessa, have a seat," he said without turning around. I sat, setting my tablet on his desk. "The Q3 projections are looking excellent, Victor. We're tracking about 12% above last year's." "That won't be necessary," he interrupted, finally turning to face me. His expression was carefully neutral, but there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Discomfort. Guilt, perhaps. "Vanessa, you've been with Donovan and Sons for a long time." 20 years next month," I said, smiling. "We joked about having a celebration, maybe even a small plaque for my office." "Yes, well," he cleared his throat. "The company is moving in a new direction. We need fresh blood, new ideas. The board and I feel it's time to bring in someone with a more contemporary approach to finance." The words hung in the air between us. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, the setup to some elaborate joke. It didn't come. "You're firing me," I said flatly. "I prefer to think of it as making room for the company's future." He slid a folder across the desk toward me. "Your severance package. 6 months salary. Continuation of benefits for 3. Standard non-disclosure and non-compete agreements." My hands didn't shake as I took the folder. My voice didn't waver as I asked, "Who's replacing me?" Victor had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Brandon starts next Monday." Brandon, his 28-year-old son. The one who'd spent exactly 8 months in our finance department before deciding it was too boring and transferring to marketing, where he'd been mediocre at best. "Brandon," I repeated. The pieces clicked into place with painful clarity. "He doesn't have the experience, Victor. He doesn't have the knowledge. He has an MBA from Harvard." Victor straightened his tie, a defensive gesture I'd seen countless times in board meetings. "And he has vision. The company needs vision going forward." What the company needed was someone who understood the intricacies of its finances, but I knew arguing was pointless. Victor had made his decision. The father was choosing his son over 2 decades of my loyalty and expertise. "I see." I stood, tucking the folder under my arm. "Will that be all?" Victor looked relieved that I wasn't making a scene. "HR will help you clear out your office. We'd appreciate if you could be out by the end of the day." End of the day. 20 years reduced to a few hours of packing boxes under the watchful eye of security. "Of course." I nodded stiffly. "Good luck, Victor." I walked out without looking back, my heels clicking against the hardwood floors. The hallway seemed longer than usual, stretching endlessly before me. Faces turned as I passed, curious, concerned. Word would spread soon enough. In my office, I closed the door and leaned against it, finally allowing myself a moment of pure, unadulterated rage. How dare he? How dare he toss me aside for his unqualified son? Every financial decision, every successful strategy, every crisis averted, all forgotten in an instant. A soft knock interrupted my fury. "Miss Hartwell?" It was Natalie, my assistant of 5 years. "I heard, is it true?" I opened the door, my expression carefully composed. "Yes, I'm leaving today." Her eyes widened. "Today? But what about the Blackwood account? And the budget meetings next week? And Those will be Brandon's problems now," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Would you mind finding me some boxes?" While Natalie hunted down packing materials, I sat at my desk and opened my computer. 20 years of files, contacts, and institutional knowledge. I had 30 minutes before someone from IT would arrive to monitor my digital departure, ensuring I didn't take anything proprietary. I wasn't interested in company secrets, but there were things I'd created: financial models, analysis frameworks, client relationship notes that were mine, my intellectual property. I quickly began sorting and downloading to my personal drive, not out of spite, but out of a sense of self preservation. These were tools I'd need if I wanted to work again. Natalie returned with boxes and a concerned expression. "What will you do?" "Take a vacation, for starters," I said, forcing a smile I didn't feel. I haven't had more than a week off in 15 years. The next few hours passed in a blur. Colleagues stopped by, awkward and unsure what to say. Some were genuinely upset. Others were clearly calculating how my departure might affect their own positions. By 4 o'clock, my office was stripped bare, 20 years reduced to 3 cardboard boxes. Ryan from IT hovered nearby as I sent a final email to my team. Professional, encouraging, without a hint of the betrayal churning inside me. I signed out of the system for the last time, handed over my badge, and walked out of Donovan and Sons with my head held high. Only when I reached my car did I allow the mask to slip. One tear. That's all Victor Donovan would get from me. One tear before I straightened my spine, started the engine, and drove away from the company I'd helped build. That night, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. Being fired after 20 years of loyal service certainly qualified as special. I sat on my balcony, the severance agreement spread out before me, and considered my options. At 53, finding a comparable position wouldn't be easy. CFO jobs weren't exactly abundant, and I'd have to compete with younger candidates, many with the same Harvard MBA that Brandon flaunted. The non-compete clause prevented me from working for any direct competitors for 18 months, essentially the entire industry I'd specialized in. My phone buzzed with messages from former colleagues, expressions of shock and support. One caught my eye. From Alexander Rivera, Donovan's VP of Operations, and my friend for 15 years. "This is wrong. Victor's making a huge mistake. Call me." I didn't call, not that night. Instead, I created a spreadsheet because that's what financial people do when faced with a crisis. I calculated my savings, my expenses, the runway provided by the severance package. I had time. Not in abundance, but enough to be strategic rather than desperate. The next morning, I woke with purpose. Step 1, hire a lawyer to review the severance agreement. Step 2, reach out to my professional network. Step 3, take that vacation I'd mentioned to Natalie. My lawyer, Elena Martinez, raised her eyebrows at the non-compete clause. "This is extremely broad, Vanessa. They're essentially trying to keep you out of the entire industry. Can we challenge it?" "Possibly. Non-competes are increasingly difficult to enforce, especially when they prevent someone from earning a living in their field of expertise." She made some notes. "But litigation is expensive and time-consuming. Let me see if we can negotiate something more reasonable." While Elena worked on the legal front, I began methodically reaching out to my professional contacts. Not actively job hunting yet, but ensuring I remained on their radar. Coffee meetings, industry events, carefully worded emails about my transition to new opportunities. I was playing the long game. A week passed. Then 2. I actually did take that vacation. A week at a beach house on the Oregon coast where I walked along the shore each morning and tried not to check my email every 5 minutes. It was both liberating and terrifying to be disconnected from the work that had defined me for so long. Alexander called twice more. I finally answered on the 3rd attempt. "Vanessa, thank God. I've been worried about you." "I'm fine, Alexander. Just taking some time to regroup." "Things are a mess here," he said, his voice tight with stress. "Brandon doesn't understand half of what you managed. The Blackwood account is in jeopardy, and the quarterly projections are all over the place." A small, petty part of me felt vindicated. I tamped it down. "I'm sure he'll figure it out. He has that Harvard MBA after all." Alexander snorted. "Yeah, well, Harvard didn't teach him how to navigate the specific financial ecosystem you built over 2 decades. Victor's starting to realize that. Not my problem anymore, I said, though I felt a twinge of concern for the company I dedicated so much of my life to. How are you holding up? Considering early retirement, he admitted. But listen, that's not why I called. Lawrence Chen reached out to me. He's looking for a financial consultant for his new venture. I gave him your name. Lawrence Chen, the tech entrepreneur who'd made billions selling his software company the previous year. Now he was on to his next big thing, something in sustainable energy, if the business press was to be believed. A consultant, I repeated. That might not violate my non-compete. Exactly what I was thinking. He's having dinner at Maison tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. I took the liberty of making you a reservation at the next table. I laughed, my first genuine laugh since the firing. Very subtle, Alexander. Subtlety is overrated. Wear that blue suit that makes you look like you could buy and sell the world. And Vanessa, don't let Victor win by disappearing. After we hung up, I pulled out the blue suit in question and examined it critically. Alexander was right. It did convey a certain power. I laid it out for tomorrow's coincidental meeting with Lawrence Chen, feeling something I hadn't experienced since walking out of Donovan and Sons, anticipation. The dinner with Lawrence wasn't really a dinner with Lawrence at all. It was a masterclass in orchestrated coincidence, with Alexander arriving at my table just as I was finishing my appetizer. Vanessa, what a surprise! His acting was terrible, but it didn't matter. He gestured to the distinguished Asian man at his side. Have you met Lawrence Chen? Lawrence, this is Vanessa Hartwell, the financial genius I was telling you about. Lawrence's handshake was firm, his gaze assessing. Alexander speaks very highly of you, Ms. Hartwell. Would you mind if we joined you? I find chance meetings often lead to the most interesting conversations. 2 hours later, I had a consulting contract to review and a genuine sense of excitement about Lawrence's vision for revolutionizing energy storage. The project would require all my financial expertise without directly competing with Donovan and Sons. A perfect loophole in my non-compete. You'll need office space, Lawrence said as we finished our coffee. I have room in my downtown building. 3rd floor, nice view of the park. Just like that, I had a new professional identity. Vanessa Hartwell, financial consultant. It wasn't the same as being CFO of an established company, but it offered something unexpected. Freedom. As a consultant, I could set my own hours, choose my clients, build something that was truly mine. I signed the contract with Lawrence the following week. Elena approved it from a legal standpoint, confirming it didn't violate the non-compete. I leased a small but elegant office in Lawrence's building and began setting up shop. Meanwhile, news from Donovan and Sons trickled in through my network. The Blackwood account, worth nearly $20 million annually, was indeed in trouble. The quarterly financials were delayed for the first time in the company's history. Brandon was struggling, and Victor was growing increasingly frustrated. I felt a complex mix of emotions: concern for the company I'd helped build, sympathy for colleagues caught in the chaos, and yes, a certain vindication that my expertise wasn't as replaceable as Victor had assumed. 3 months into my new consulting business, I had established a small but impressive client roster. Lawrence's project was my primary focus, but I'd taken on 2 other clients as well: a startup needing financial structure and a mid-sized company planning international expansion. My reputation for financial acumen and strategic thinking was spreading. It was a Tuesday morning, exactly 4 months after my firing, when my office phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Vanessa Hartwell Consulting, I answered. Vanessa, it's Victor. The voice I hadn't heard since that day in his office. My heart rate picked up, but my voice remained steady. Victor, this is unexpected. Yes, well, he cleared his throat. I heard you've started your own firm. Congratulations. Thank you. What can I do for you? I was hoping we could meet. There are some developments at Donovan and Sons I'd like to discuss with you. The calculated vagueness was typical Victor. Developments, I repeated. Would these developments happen to involve the Blackwood account? Or perhaps the delayed quarterly financials? Or maybe the fact that your stock price has dropped 15% in the past 3 months? Silence. Then you've been keeping tabs. It's my industry, Victor. I pay attention. I checked my calendar, deliberately making him wait. I can fit you in next Wednesday at 2. Next Wednesday? Vanessa, this is rather urgent. I'm sure it is, but I have client commitments. Next Wednesday at 2, or we can try for the following week? Another silence. I could almost hear him weighing his pride against his desperation. Wednesday at 2 is fine. My office? No, my office. I gave him the address. See you then. I hung up before he could respond, my heart pounding. Victor Donovan was coming to me. Whatever crisis Brandon had created must be significant indeed. For the next week, I focused on my clients, deliberately pushing thoughts of Victor and Donovan and Sons aside. But by Wednesday morning, I couldn't deny the nervous energy coursing through me. I chose my outfit carefully. The blue power suit again, with a silk blouse and the pearl necklace my mother had given me when I graduated business school. Armor for the coming confrontation. At precisely 2 o'clock, my assistant showed Victor into my office. He looked older than I remembered, the lines around his eyes deeper, his shoulders slightly stooped. The past 4 months had clearly taken a toll. Vanessa, he extended his hand. Thank you for seeing me. I shook it briefly. Have a seat, Victor. Would you like coffee? No, thank you. He sat in one of the client chairs across from my desk, looking uncomfortable in this space where he had no authority. You've done well for yourself. I have. I took my seat behind the desk. But you didn't come here to discuss my consulting business. What's happening at Donovan and Sons? He sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. We're in trouble, Vanessa. Serious trouble. The Blackwood account is threatening to leave. The quarterly financials are a mess. The board is asking questions I can't answer. And Brandon? Victor's expression tightened. Brandon is struggling with the complexity of the role. He's a bright young man, but being CFO requires more than brightness and a Harvard MBA. I finished for him. It requires experience, institutional knowledge, and relationships built over years, not months. Yes, the admission seemed to pain him physically. Which is why I'm here. We need your help, Vanessa. There it was. The request I'd half expected since his call. My help, I repeated, after you fired me to give my position to your unqualified son. I made a mistake, he said, the words clearly difficult for him. A serious misjudgment. I let personal considerations override business sense, and the company is suffering for it. 4 months ago, I would have given anything to hear those words. Now I've found they gave me less satisfaction than I'd imagined. What exactly are you asking, Victor? He leaned forward. Come back. As CFO. Same position, better compensation package. The board has already approved it. I raised an eyebrow. And Brandon? He'll move to a VP role in business development. Still executive level, but in an area better suited to his skills. I studied Victor's face, noting the desperation poorly hidden behind his business-like demeanor. You understand how this looks, don't you? You fire a qualified woman with 20 years of experience to install your son, then come begging for help when it predictably blows up in your face. Victor flinched at the word begging, but didn't deny it. I understand it looks bad. It was bad. But this isn't about me or my pride or even about Brandon. It's about saving the company. 2,000 people depend on Donovan and Sons for their livelihoods. He was appealing to my sense of responsibility, my emotional connection to the company and its employees. It was manipulative, but not entirely ineffective. I did care about what happened to Donovan and Sons. I need time to consider this, I said finally, and I'll need to see the full financial picture before making any decision. Relief flooded his face. Of course, I can have the files sent over. No, I interrupted. I'll come in and review them personally. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. I'll need full access and complete transparency. Absolutely. He stood, clearly eager to cement the arrangement before I could change my mind. Thank you, Vanessa. This means I haven't agreed to anything yet, I reminded him. I'm simply gathering information to make an informed decision. That's what financial officers do. He nodded, chastened. Of course. Tomorrow at 8 then. After he left, I sat in silence, processing the unexpected turn of events. Victor Donovan had admitted he was wrong. He'd asked for my help. Part of me, a small, vindictive part, wanted to refuse, to let him and Brandon sink in the mess they'd created. But there were others to consider. Natalie and her team, Alexander and his department, all the employees who'd had nothing to do with Victor's decision, who were just trying to do their jobs and support their families. I called Lawrence to explain the situation. He was understanding, even encouraging. Consultants consult, Vanessa. If they need your expertise for a corporate rescue, that's still within our arrangement. Just don't neglect our project entirely. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, weighing my options. Return to Donovan and Sons as CFO with the awkwardness of Brandon's demotion and Victor's wounded pride. Or decline, continue building my consulting business, and watch from a distance as the company potentially faltered. The next morning at 8 sharp, I walked into Donovan and Sons for the first time since my unceremonious departure 4 months earlier. Heads turned as I passed. Whispers followed. Natalie spotted me from her desk and actually gasped, "Ms. Hartwell, you're back!" "Just consulting today, Natalie," I said, though her obvious delight at seeing me was touching. "I'll be reviewing the financials." "Oh, thank God," she muttered, then blushed. "I mean, it's good to see you. Your old office, the CFO's office, is ready for you." My old office now bore signs of Brandon's brief tenure. Motivational posters on the walls, a gaming console in the corner, coffee cups everywhere. But the view was the same, and the chair still adjusted perfectly to my height. Some things didn't change. What had changed dramatically were the company's finances. As the day progressed and I dug deeper into the numbers, the picture became increasingly concerning. The Blackwood account wasn't just in jeopardy, it was actively being courted by a competitor. The quarterly financials weren't just delayed, they contained serious inconsistencies that would raise red flags with auditors. Cash flow was dangerously constrained. Victor appeared in my doorway at noon. "How bad is it?" I didn't sugarcoat it. "Bad enough that your concern is justified. You're looking at significant client loss, potential regulatory issues, and a serious cash crunch within 2 quarters if things continue on this trajectory." He paled. "Can it be fixed?" "Most of it, yes, with immediate, decisive action. The Blackwood situation is particularly time-sensitive." "What do you need?" "First, complete authority to make necessary financial decisions without interference. Second, a public statement from you and the board acknowledging my return and expressing full confidence in my leadership. Third, a revised contract with significantly improved terms, including equity and a seat on the board." Victor blinked at the boldness of my demands. "That's substantial." "So is the mess I'm being asked to clean up." I closed the laptop in front of me. "Those are my conditions, Victor. You can take them to the board, or I can walk out that door and return to my consulting business." He studied me for a long moment, perhaps seeing for the first time not the loyal employee he'd taken for granted, but a formidable financial expert who knew exactly what she was worth. "I'll call an emergency board meeting this afternoon," he said finally. "In the meantime, is there anything you can do about Blackwood?" I checked my watch. "I'll make a call, no promises." After he left, I dialed Thomas Blackwood's direct line. We'd worked together for 15 years and had built a relationship based on mutual respect and trust. "Vanessa Hartwell," he answered, surprise evident in his voice. "I heard you'd left Donovan." "I did. Now I'm considering coming back, but I wanted to speak with you first. I understand there have been some concerns with the account." Thomas didn't hold back. For 20 minutes, he detailed the issues that had developed under Brandon's management. Missed deadlines, miscommunications, billing errors. Basic mistakes that never would have happened on my watch. "We've been with Donovan for 18 years, he concluded, but the last 4 months have been a disaster. I have a meeting with Cooper and Wyatt next week to discuss transferring our business." "Before you make that decision," I said carefully, "would you consider giving me 30 days? If I return as CFO with full authority to address these issues, I believe we can resolve every concern you've raised." There was a pause. "You're coming back as CFO? What about Brandon?" Brandon will be moving to a different role. I'll be personally overseeing your account, just like before. Another pause. 30 days. For you, Vanessa, we'll wait 30 days. But I want weekly progress reports and immediate resolution of the billing errors. You'll have it. Thank you, Thomas. One fire temporarily contained. Dozens more to go. The board meeting was set for 4 o'clock. I spent the intervening hours diving deeper into the financial morass, identifying the most critical areas for immediate intervention. By the time Victor summoned me to the boardroom, I had a clear picture of both the problems and potential solutions. 12 board members sat around the massive table, their expressions ranging from relief to skepticism to outright hostility. Brandon was noticeably absent. Ms. Hartwell, the chairman began, Victor has shared your conditions for returning as CFO. While we appreciate the severity of our current situation, some of these terms are unprecedented. So is firing a CFO with 20 years of exemplary service to install an unqualified family member? I replied calmly. Yet here we are. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. I continued. In the 4 hours I've spent reviewing the company's current financial position, I've identified critical issues that threaten not just quarterly performance, but potentially the company's viability. I've also made initial contact with Blackwood and secured a 30-day commitment to delay their departure, a departure that would have cost this company $20 million in annual revenue. I opened my portfolio and distributed a one-page summary of my findings and recommendations. My conditions reflect the value I bring and the scope of the challenge I'd be taking on. If you find them unreasonable, I wish you the best of luck finding someone else willing to step into this particular fire. The chairman studied the document, his expression growing increasingly somber. These numbers, are they accurate? Unfortunately, yes, and they represent just the issues I've identified in one day's review. I suspect there's more. The board members exchanged glances. The chairman cleared his throat. Could you give us a few minutes to discuss this privately? I nodded and stepped outside, not particularly anxious about their decision. Either they would accept my terms or I would return to my consulting business. Either way, I was in a position of strength, a dramatic reversal from 4 months ago. Less than 10 minutes later, I was called back in. The chairman spoke for the group. We accept your conditions, Ms. Hartwell. The legal team will draw up the contract immediately. We would like you to start officially on Monday, though any efforts you can make in the meantime would be greatly appreciated. I nodded, keeping my expression professional despite the surge of satisfaction. Thank you. I'll need a formal announcement by close of business today, and direct access to all department heads tomorrow. Of course. Victor stood and extended his hand. Welcome back, Vanessa. I shook it firmly, meeting his eyes. Thank you, Victor. I look forward to getting things back on track. As I walked out of the boardroom, my phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. Board meeting just ended. Did you take them to the cleaners? I smiled and typed back, let's just say the new contract reflects my true value. Drinks later. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of emergency meetings, financial triage, and strategic planning. I worked 14-hour days, assembling a clear picture of the company's position and implementing immediate corrective actions. Natalie was ecstatic to have me back, efficiently anticipating my needs before I could express them. Brandon avoided me entirely, which was probably for the best. I heard through the grapevine that he'd thrown quite a tantrum when informed of his lateral move to business development, but had eventually accepted the reality of the situation. By Monday morning, my official first day back, I'd already resolved the most critical billing errors with Blackwood, identified the inconsistencies in the quarterly financials, and developed a plan to address the cash flow constraints. The announcement of my return had been met with relief throughout the company and had even prompted a small rally in the stock price. Victor stopped by my office late Monday afternoon. He looked uncomfortable, lingering in the doorway until I invited him in. The board is impressed with your progress already, he said, taking a seat across from me. Thomas Blackwood called me personally to express his satisfaction with the billing corrections. Good. We need to retain that account. Victor nodded, then fell silent, clearly working up to something. Finally, he said, I owe you an apology, Vanessa. A real one, not just the expedient admission of error I made when asking for your help. I put down my pen and gave him my full attention. I'm listening. What I did was wrong. Not just a business mistake, but a personal betrayal of your loyalty and contribution to this company. He met my eyes directly. I let my desire to secure Brandon's future override my business judgment and my sense of fairness. It was wrong, and I'm sorry. The apology was unexpected in its frankness. Why did you really do it, Victor? After 20 years, why did you suddenly decide I needed to be replaced? He sighed heavily. Brandon was struggling. In marketing, in his personal life. He needed direction, purpose. I convinced myself that giving him real responsibility would force him to rise to the occasion. And he hesitated. And, I prompted. And I'd started to take you for granted, he admitted. You made everything look so effortless, so routine. I forgot how much skill and experience it actually required. I forgot you weren't replaceable. It was perhaps the most honest assessment he could have given. Thank you for that explanation. I appreciate the apology. Can we move forward, professionally, I mean? Can we rebuild some level of trust? I considered the question carefully. Trust is earned, Victor. You've taken the first step with this apology. The next steps will involve respecting my authority in financial matters and supporting the changes I need to make, even when they're difficult. He nodded solemnly. You have my word. As he left, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past 4 months. From the shock of being unceremoniously fired to the satisfaction of returning on my own terms with greater power and compensation than before. It wasn't about revenge, though I couldn't deny a certain poetic justice in the situation. It was about value, recognition, and respect. The following weeks were intense but rewarding. The quarterly financials were corrected and released. Blackwood confirmed they would remain with Donovan and Sons. The cash flow situation began to stabilize under my careful management. 1 month after my return, I was presenting the updated financial strategy to the board when I noticed Victor watching me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Pride, perhaps, or regret. Maybe both. Later, as we walked back to our offices, he said quietly, You know, Vanessa, I've been thinking about succession planning. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? Yes, for my position. I'm 68, and this crisis has made me realize it might be time to consider the company's future leadership. Brandon will need considerably more seasoning before he's ready for that role, I said carefully. Victor actually chuckled. Brandon isn't CEO material. I think we've established that fairly conclusively. He paused outside my office door. No, I was thinking of someone with proven financial acumen, strategic vision, and a demonstrated ability to navigate crises. Someone who already has the board's confidence and a seat at the table. He didn't need to say more. The implication was clear and surprisingly welcome. That's an interesting perspective, Victor. Perhaps we should discuss it further at some point. Perhaps we should. He smiled slightly. Though I imagine you'll negotiate quite favorable terms. You can count on it, I replied with a smile of my own. As I watched him walk away, I thought about the strange path that had led me here. 4 months ago, I'd been devastated by betrayal, uncertain of my future. Now, I stood at the threshold of greater opportunity than I'd ever imagined. My value not just recognized but amplified by the very crisis meant to replace me. Sometimes being fired isn't an ending. Sometimes it's the beginning of something far better than you ever dared to dream. The key is not letting someone else's poor judgment define your worth. The key is knowing your value, standing your ground, and being ready when they inevitably realize what they've lost. My name is Vanessa Hartwell. At 53, I was fired to make room for the boss's son. At 54, I might just become the boss.